Well, we are in the 18th day of the war between Azerbaijan and Nagorno Karabakh. Although the international community and all of its official institutions are calling for ceasefire and return to the negotiation table, there is no real de-escalation in these days, unfortunately. On the other hand, Turkey's direct involvement in this conflict continues, which was proven many times, not only by Armenia, but by other countries as well. Many leaders, you as well, highlights this fact. The EU has many problems with Turkey, namely regarding its conflict with the EU member countries, namely Cyprus and Greece. Why is the EU's hesitate concerning sanctions? Should we talk about the lack of willingness to act? Maybe you can start.
First of all, indeed, this parliament is quite united. Last week on the debate was very clear shown that we like that violence stopped immediately and that all parties go back to the negotiation table. The only one internationally recognized body which has to deal with the conflict is the Minsk Group, and the Minsk Group co-chaired on the basic principles which was agreed from the both sides. And in the history, in the last years, we saw in a certain moment that there was a very close to some kind of solution, and then nothing's happened. Now we was also very disappointed to see the statement from negotiated by Russia, and then finally there is no real keeping this promise to stop the violence. First of all, stop the violence is the most important. Secondly, as you mentioned, third parties should not be involved in the conflict. We have a lot of signals about involvement, not only like a propaganda, but also by military involvement, by potentially also Syrian fighters going through Turkey to the Nagorno Karabakh region or area, or conflict area, if you like. This is very disturbing. Unfortunately, even the European Union, even our High Representative couldn't provide us with the real information or to confirm, is it true or not true, what we hear from different media sources about involvement of Turkey. And for sure, we need to call, and we call to Turkey to stop any kind of involvement in this conflict.
Yeah. Mr. Mavridis, you are concerning mostly because we talk about your country as well, Cyprus. Why there is no sanctions?
Okay, I would take the line from my colleague, and I would say just before this program, I looked on some of the newsletters to get informed how is the situation now in the Artsakh, Nagorno Karabakh area. And I would say this, what really makes me very disappointed is the fact that even though in the news it appears that each side blames each other for not following the ceasefire, we could have a mechanism that would detect which side, in a way, breaks up the ceasefire. And if we had a mechanism, it would work most likely as a preventive tool, as a preventive measure. And it is an undisputed fact, and I have emphasized this in my interventions in the European Parliament as well, that an undisputed fact is that Armenia is willing to discuss the details for its implementation, while Azerbaijan does not. And this is a fact. And in a way, it indicates to anyone who has open eyes to realize who is for war and who is for peace and dialogue. The other point I'd like to make, it's about the European Union. Rightly stated already, if it were up to the European Parliament to decide how to treat this conflict now, or more generally to treat Turkey, I think sanctions would have been imposed a long time ago, and very strict sanctions. Unfortunately, though, the reality is that the way that the power is divided within the European Parliament, these type of decisions are made up by the European Council, where, one, we need unanimity, and two, reality is that some member states, such as Germany, of course, they weigh more their own economic or other interests. I don't approve this, but this is a reality we have to deal with. One more point before we get on with the discussion. The role of Turkey. I'm going to be as frank and honest as I understand. The big mistake that we do make in the European Union, it's very similar to the mistakes being done during the 1930s towards the Nazis regime. If we follow the so-called appeasement policy, unfortunately, a time will come when that would be a deadlock, and the price we will pay in Armenia, in Azerbaijan, and outside as humanity will be accumulated. And today's modern times, I would say that the Nazis and Hitler is very clear. It's Erdogan. We have to face reality. It's not easy to face reality, but this is the only way out.
Mm-hmm. So, Remus, do you have something to add?
Yes, it's a rare occasion that I agree very much with a social democrat, but in this case I do. Mr. Mavridis has got some really valid points, not least on the observation or detection mechanism at the line of contact. During my visit to Nagorno Karabakh, I noted that the Armenians were more than willing to establish cameras and observation while the Azeris resisted. That was quite telling to me. What has also been telling is that the Armenians have invited foreign journalists, some of whom from Le Monde, for instance, have been severely injured by Azeri shelling, while Azerbaijan only invited loyal regime journalists and their comrades from Turkey to observe the conflict. That's very telling for me as a European. And as regards Turkey, I think it's time for Europe to wake up and smell the coffee. Turkey is asserting a post-Ottoman imperialist policy. And they are dreaming of past days of glory, which is shown by their actions in North Africa, Mediterranean, Northeast Syria, even Iraq, and now Nagorno Karabakh. This needs to stop. And Europe must realize that Erdogan, he's a harsh man. He does not understand very light diplomatic language. He understands clear language, and it's time to show him that from the European side. It's time to exclude Turkey from the OSCE Minsk group, a party that does send jihadists to the war theater in Nagorno Karabakh shall not be invited to discuss the future of Nagorno Karabakh. That is clear. Also, Europe needs to understand that this country is not suited to not even have frozen negotiations on EU membership, but an end to these negotiations.
Yeah, you have mentioned that you have been in the region. So maybe my question here will go to you. Of course, I know that it's kind of delicate issue to visit the Nagorno Karabakh, but do you think that in order to getting to know the people and the situation on the ground in the best way is to visit Nagorno Karabakh and in order to have a more comprehensive solution and idea?
Definitely. In the last mandate, I was vice chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and we had this intention, even agreed by the Minsk group, by the both sides, to have a delegation from the European Parliament, from the AFET, going to Azerbaijan, going through the contact line, which is, as everybody knows, it's one of the most secured and dangerous place with minefields and with all these difficult the difficulties to go through, and then from there to go to Yerevan. That was an idea which unfortunately was not realized, but I think we should continue to try as member of the parliament to organize a delegation to visit Azerbaijan, going through the contact line, Karabakh, and then to Armenia as well.
What was the obstacle?
Was a protection that security reasons. Although the both sides agreed first, and then we talked with the people on the ground, also with the the Minsk group staff, which are securing the line. But then finally, maybe 1 week before, they say the situation is escalating and something's happened. And due to security reasons, we decided to postpone this now, to postpone many years ago already. But I think it's also time to think to do again this try.
I was going to say that I did had myself an invitation to visit the area, although and I was thinking about it, but at some point other priorities took place. But this is how I will connect with what's happening now in the Mediterranean. This is my second term, and being the chairman of the Political Committee for the Mediterranean, I would say this. Certainly, each conflict had its historical background and explanations, and there are matters to be considered. But at the same time, here in the European Union, we have developed a culture of understanding, dialogue, solving issues in a civilized way and avoiding wars. Now, having said that, though, I would say that if we let this specific conflict between Armenia or Artsakh with Azerbaijan, I think we will miss the whole point, because had it not for Turkey being the instigator, I think it would be much more easy to control it and terminate all clashes. After the lessons we learned, well, we should have learned as a Europe, with the role of Turkey and Erdogan in Syria, in Libya, in the Eastern Mediterranean, in Cyprus, in Egypt with the Muslim Brotherhood, everywhere, and now in Nagorno Karabakh, Artsakh. As we speak, the Turkish expansionist policies, as rightly been noted already, are flaming all areas. That's why if we try, each one of us, to stand up against Turkey isolated, we are playing the game of Erdogan. We have to find a way for all of us to ally in a united front, starting with your first questions, sanctions, and taking in consideration that the Turkish economy is in a very fragile situation. I think Europe has a huge leverage by imposing some economic or commercial sanctions, especially on the customs union, to push real pressure on the Erdogan administration or regime, to put it rightly. If we don't do anything and keep using these soft tools, I think we will pay a heavy price later time, and it will be much more costly than today.
Yes. Well, we were always back to the same question. Then why is the EU hesitant concerning the sanctions? So this is a question that we don't have answer. I guess because why?
I think partly it goes back to NATO sensitivities, but Europe must realize that Turkey has not been acting as a reliable security partner for many, many years. Just remember when they oversaw how foreign fighters went through Turkey to the war theaters in Iraq and Syria. Just look at how they refused to let their air bases be used for attacks against ISIS and so on. These sensitivities has to be reanalyzed, revisited, because this is not the Turkey of today that we used to have in the 80s and so on and so forth. But of course, there are also financial sensitivities. There are energy security sensitivities for some countries. And of course, I respect that the will of many countries to get rid of the dependence of Russian energy. But in this case, it's very clear that we must not let that stand over the human rights of the attacked Artsakh population.
I see.
Can I just say one word?
Sure.
You know, because maybe it would seem that they avoided to answer it. Well, I will name, to my understanding, why we have not imposed sanctions so far. Hopefully within the next European Council, we might go at least a few steps forward. Especially Germany. has huge interest in exports, imports with Turkey, high-tech selling, including very high-tech arms to Turkey. These basically are I would say, the two important reasons that explain this position on behalf of EU. At the same time, though, we have to understand that there is a growing resistance or dissident view within the European Union with the leading country of France. And hopefully, in a matter of weeks, we will try to go forward with some sanctions against Turkey with a very leading role on France.
Yeah.
Maybe we should see also a bit of the history. There was also a point in time when Turkey was somehow willing and even signed the protocols in Switzerland, but never ratified because there was a pressure from their friends in Baku not to do this. Now we have the opposite. I don't know if Ankara was initiator of this situation now in Karabakh or more in Baku or more. Everybody is claiming this is also a huge propaganda and a lobby war, which is going around almost every capital in Europe and here in Brussels as well. But in any case, we have this situation on our planet. We have the United Nations, which is very weak, and we know what is in the Security Council, but we have also the OSCE Minsk Group and the three co-chairs. We cannot say now we need to replace them because we want to replace them. We don't have another as an international community because some voices here, let's do more from the European Union for the mediation. But and France is part of this three of the co-chairs. We need to do our utmost first to stop the violence, and second, based on the principles which was agreed, the three main principles: non-use of force, territorial integrity, and the right for self-determination of the people, with all the details, what is doing, when a referendum, when the internal displaced person, what will happen with them. There are many details, and the devil is mostly in the details. But we need to push the both sides back on the negotiation table under the umbrella of the three co-chairs. This is the only one, I think, civilized solution what we can have. And then we have NATO, we have our armies, but nobody in Europe will go there with the army. I mean, we need also to be very clear on this. We cannot expect that we will send troops there. This is very clear.
Yes.
Coming back to a point that you have mentioned, lack of information or fake news. In the plenary session, Mr. Borrell as well, in his statement, he highlights this point. But I would like to remind that there is a lot of neutral international respected media reports and coverages about the situation on the ground. We assume that EU and member states also have professional intelligence on the ground. So how difficult is it to establish the fact of Azerbaijani aggression, their use of cluster munitions against the civilian population of Nagorno Karabakh, their huge amount of fake news? We know very clearly from where they come from.
Shortly, because I mentioned this also in my intervention in the plenary, and we heavily criticize Mr. Borrell. How it's possible that he has no information? I mean, we have our national intelligence services, we have our partner United States, we have satellites, we have there's so many possibilities to look from not from the propaganda point of view, from the objective point of view, what is happened. But there was almost no information from them. This is something what we need to criticize very heavily, that the lack of information, or they don't like to share with the parliament the information what they have.
Yeah, I would say also that to add into all this, that especially when it comes to the transferring of the Syrian Islamic militias, of course always facilitated by Turkey in the area, to instigate one more war And for some European officials to pretend that they don't know, I think that's simply very hypocritical. Or they just don't want to face reality. I like to point out also this. I want to make it very clear that we, as members of the European Parliament, we feel, we do understand and feel the human suffering and tragic, whether they are Armenians or Azerbaijanis. Of course, we do understand that this is tragic. It's about lives and it's important to us. But at the same time, we do consider that there is an institutional, belligerent, systematic propaganda by the states of Turkey and Azerbaijan that we all know. And I will raise just one point. About a year ago, I organized here in the European Parliament an event about Nagorno Karabakh in Armenia, and I was shocked by the propaganda being financed by Azerbaijan and through so-called NGOs that people appear all of a sudden in an organized way. And I would say this, what I feel very repugnant is the fact that given the institutional denial of the Armenian genocide by Turkey and Azerbaijan, I think that what they do now, the denial itself, it's an extension of the original crime, and it's a seed for repetition in the future. And that's what scares me more, besides the tragic suffering of human beings in the area.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that Europe has the understanding that Turkey's direct involvement in the conflict in the South Caucasus, and especially its transportation of Syrian mercenaries to the conflict zone, is a threat to the stability of the whole region?
Well, they are adding an Islamist dimension to the conflict, which is extremely dangerous. And I was surprised that the High Representative did not address that in plenary last week, because he surely must have had the information, because President Macron went on the record hours before that debate and confirmed that this was the case. And that was a very clear sign of weakness on behalf of the High Representative, and maybe also lack of understanding what this could turn into. By doing so, Turkey is really turning this into a civilizational frontier, and the EU needs to come to terms with that.
Yeah. Armenia and Armenians, both here in the Europe and around the world, are trying to bring to the attention of the international community that the ongoing Turkish-Azerbaijani aggression against Nagorno Karabakh, and in some cases even the Republic of Armenia, is an existential threat for Armenians. But this is actually an attempt to complete the Armenian genocide undertaken by Turkey over a century ago. What are the most important message the EP is telling other EU decision-making institutions to follow to support the peaceful resolution of the Nagorno Karabakh conflict?
The European Parliament is currently in the process of deciding the next winner of the Sakharov Prize. A person whose actions we all should esteem. Andrei Sakharov put it quite bluntly. For Azerbaijan, the issue of Nagorno Karabakh is a matter of ambition. For the Armenians of Karabakh, it is a matter of life and death. And I think European Union officials would do good listening to Andrei Sakharov, whom they otherwise hail so much.
Do you have something to add, Mr. Kovachev?
For sure, the Council need to be more outspoken. That is clear, and the debate in the Parliament were very clear. If you follow the debate,
yes.
you saw that it was almost everybody from the different political groups that was united on the topic that European Union need to be very outspoken on this and do utmost pressure to stop immediately violence, to stop suffering, to stop killing of humans, and then to return on the negotiation table, but this time with more willing to to come to a mutual acceptable solution. This is in the interest of both sides, from Armenia and from the. I'm sure that it's also in the interest of the Azerbaijan if they indeed think that they should be a respected part of the international community, that they'd like to make deals with us on energy and whatever. But you cannot be on one side reliable economic partner and from other side not to look for a mutual acceptable solution for everybody living there.
As the MEPs, do you have the feeling that your messages, which are very quite clear, and Mr. Borrell promised that they will talk about, they will bring your messages to the Council in Luxembourg. Do you have the feeling that your messages achieve to whatever they?
Not
they have to-
entirely, no, because I was in a discussion with a senior MEP who said, well, that this conflict does not date back to the 90s. It started already in 1988. Well, no, it didn't. It started in the 20s with the separation of Nagorno Karabakh from the rest of the Armenian nation after more than 1,500 years together. Unilateral decision by Soviet Russia. That's the start of this conflict. When in a time when 90% of the population of this region was Armenian. This information needs to be spread among MEPs because the understanding is among most quite superficial. And when it remains so, it's very easy to stay neutral. And this neutrality is detrimental for the future of Nagorno Karabakh.
Yeah, I would say that unfortunately I might sound a little pessimistic, but the European Union is not a sovereign in itself organization. It's made up of sovereign states. That's why we have a long way to go until we have our own common foreign policy or common defense and security policy. So until then, though, we do have some tools. We mentioned already some of them here. And my advice to, for example, Armenia and Armenians in general would be this. They have to try and reach out of Armenia to those member states within the European Union, such as France and other member states, and ally as much as possible. At the same time, they have to build up their own strength and rely on themselves. And I will repeat what I have said at the very beginning. If we try, each one of us, in an isolated way to face Erdogan, I think we're playing their game. This is a neo-Ottoman expansionist policy, and the only way to face up to that is all of us who are being under threat to really get together and act in a coordinated way. Otherwise, we're going to be weak and in a very much disadvantaged position in facing and doing something concrete against this expansionist policy of Turkey.
And if I may, because it's very important, and some colleagues always talk about precedent cases. There are no precedent cases. Every case is totally different. Kosovo is different, Abkhazia, Ossetia is different, Transnistria is different, Crimea is different, Catalonia is different. Every case has his history and his background, and you cannot compare one with the other, because I hear some and there that some people are saying, oh, let's do it like here or let's do it like that. This is absolutely not possible. Every case has his own dynamic and history, as you mentioned before, and you cannot say, but what is common is the Helsinki Final Act and the agreed international principles which need to be based for a mutual acceptable solution of this situation as well.
I see a parallel to the Palestinian refugees, though, because there you can inherit the refugee status. And President Aliyev has continued the same policy in Azerbaijan for those who fled Nagorno Karabakh in the 1990s, a second-class citizen status for these people to keep the discontent in place, not to settle for peace. And that is a very important reason why this conflict remains a frozen one and not a resolved one, and European lawmakers should be aware of that.
Armenia, it's for peace, while Azerbaijan and Turkey are for war.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Հիշեցնեմ Եվրախորհրդարանի տաղավարում իմ հյուրերն էին Եվրապատգամավորներ Անդրեյ Կովաչևը, Չարլի Վեմսերը եւ Կոստաս Մավրիդեսը։ Հաղթանակ եւ խաղաղություն բոլորիս։